We will do everything in English because we have few guys. Thank you, Teuš. Because we have few guys from Spain and Croatia, so it will be just for them. And we are always expecting guys from Italy. They always say they're going to come, but something always happens. So this is going to be in English. For the ones that are here first time, there are two reasons why we do this. First, when I came here, I think 8 years ago in Slovenia, I didn't really know what to expect of performance community here. And then I realized that for some time that there are really high-level coaches here. And despite the fact that you don't really have a formal education here for strength and conditioning, in Croatia we have that. We have master's degree for the last 25 years for just to be strength and conditioning coach, but it doesn't really affect that. But what is different between here and Croatia is you don't really have here these sorts of communication between coaches. You have high-level coaches, but everybody's for itself, and we don't really communicate. When I came to Ljubljana 5 years ago, I had a coffee with Matej. We had a great coffee. We discussed and said we should do this every week. And I haven't seen him for 5 years. But it's the reality of our life. You know, everything is very busy. He has a family, I have a family, it's normal. But this kind of organizing maybe can bring us together to communicate. Second reason is that, so we have amazing performance stuff here, that's what I think, together with our physios. But when you spend a lot of time together with the same guys, some kind of social consensus gets up and we all kind of agree on the same things all the time. And we all do the same things because we kind of invented the whole structure of our performance. So that's why I think it's great for us to present what are we doing and maybe get some opinions from you, get some critics, get whatever. Experiences, however we want to put it. This is not my lecture about teaching you guys this topic. This is going to be kind of tease presentation just to open up a topic and maybe talk about things here. We're going to talk today about preparations for games and practices, which we're going to call preps, because you probably all call it prep as it is. Until the end of this all meetup, I'm going to refer to it as a prep. How did prep or preparations came to exist in our community? I don't actually really know, but I'm very happy that they do exist because it gave us value, it gave us opportunity, and that's why I think it's very important for us to talk about it. When we talk about preps, I would like to talk about how practices existed. Sorry, I'm going to stand here. How practices existed in history. When we talk, especially in basketball, I don't know other sports, but when you talk with old coaches that were coaches 30 years ago, I talk about sports coaches, they always say, you know, when we were coaches, you know, practices were like 2.5 hours, 3 hours. We really trained a lot. You guys don't train shit these days. You know, that's really short. You don't actually work a lot. And then I love to ask yourself, what did you do? And when they dissect their practice, they come to this. And it's true. They had a strength and conditioning coach. He would do 30 minutes of warm-up. Then they would do some kind of introduction in basketball. After that, they would do team practice or scrimmage, small-sided games, whatever. And they would finish it with individual practice, either shooting or whatever. But and I said, okay, I really don't agree with you that we don't train enough. We just restructured it pretty differently. So our whole structure of practice that we do looks like this. At the first, it looks really complicated, but it's going to be very familiar for you. This is just kind of for presentation purposes. So this is performance medicine and science. This is our section. We kind of come before everyone and we talk about availability of the player. It's our first meeting. Sometimes it's 1 minute, sometimes it's 15 minutes, but we know what's going to happen with players before players start coming to individual practices, prepping and physiotherapy. So we know everything's going to happen. And then I talk to individual development coach and give him the situation with players and how much should and what should he load-wise do with players. After that, practitioners spread out through the individual practices and preparations and physiotherapy, and when we all finish that, we come together for a team practice, and we are all together on a team practice. After team practice, we again spread out to our kind of silos, let's call it, in groups for individual videos, weightlifting practices, and additional basketball practice. But for this to be like this, why is it so different from what happened in the past? Is because majority of everything that our players do is very individualized. So this is the only part as a team practice that is not individualized. Everything else is tailored for our players to kind of be, let's say, the best that they can be, or ready for the games. For it, you need to make a prep. For building a prep, you have to realize what prep is not for, and prep is not for any kind of group work, team stretching, any kind of getting your temperature up, cycling, running, or any kind of sports technique. What is very important here is that we have in mind that we don't want to do everything that is going to take care of itself in the team practice. So we're not going to build his temperature up and lose time 10 minutes to do that if he's going to do that in first 10 minutes of practice. Or we're not going to do any kind of team stuff. We're not going to do individual technique. Maybe he needs to have it, but because he has other places in this whole organization to do it. So we're going to be concentrated on whatever the prep is. And then we have to decide what can we do during the prep. What actually is prep for. So it's for soft tissue work, tendon work, mobility work, local strength, corrective exercises, technique learning, which is a very important part of our prep. It is for having a routine, because making a routine for a player, from a feedback from that, it gives them at least a feeling that they are ready for practice, because they know that that he did whatever he could do to have a good practice or to have a good game, especially when he gets adapted to that prep. Spend time with the player, because I'm not really sure if I didn't have this prep time, when would I really spend one-on-one with my player? When would I open conversation with him about his issues or about whatever is happening in his life? When I speak to other coaches, they always said, when you're on the airport, you have a opportunity to go to them. And I always feel they sit in some groups of 5, and I sit there and I have feeling, okay, I feel like a spy, and they're looking at me. So what do you want? They're having their own conversation. They're talking shit about whoever in the club. So I think this is kind of opportunity to really get to know them and what is their trouble, and time to show love to your players, which I think is, because you all work with players, is a big portion of your work with any person, and for me with a player it's very important. I define love for a player is my eagerness for him to be better at whatever he's doing. So if I show that I'm very eager to work with him, then I think I have better results than just kind of do this and this. So that's what our preps are why are we building it. How do we build it, or some kind of anatomy of a prep, is that we have some kind of archetype of what is going in, what is going when. We start with tendons. After that, we do some foam rolling or soft tissue work and flossing. After that, mobility work. After that, breathing and core. After that, local strength. And then at the end, technique and plyometry. I'm not going to dissect every part of it because it will be too long. This is not a workshop for preps, but I'm going to open part of things here that I think could maybe open questions, so I'm going to try to resolve them, and why do we put it in that, and what do we do in it. First is, why do we do tendons at the start? This is going to maybe look a bit complicated, but what is shown here is actually the enzyme that works and starts the metabolism of tendon, and how often does it fire up. So you have opportunity for a tendon to start its metabolism for 10 and 20 minutes, and after that this metabolism won't fire up for next 6 hours, because in 3 hours it will not fire up again. So that's why if you use this first 30 minutes of your prep for whatever kind of work that's going to warm up his tendon, you will not get information for a tendon to change. And I'm sure you all know that tendonitis is actually misaligned collagen, and so what you are trying to kind of give direct information through all our exercises, either is isometrics or is combined with some kind of isotonic work, that you're trying to align that collagen. So that's why we do it in the first 10 minutes of our prep. When it comes to core is always combined with breathing, for the simple reason because we think that breathing and controlling interabdominal pressures and bracing is a base of core development. And base of breathing is DNS. It can be whatever. There are a lot of schools, but we kind of base everything on DNS. I'm sure you know what it is. And then when we finish with breathing, short breathing session, we go to core. Core is always different because we think it's a very complex part of our body and it's very complex to develop it. So it's always some kind of combo that is 3 exercises that they choose for that day, and they do 2 to 3 rounds of that. And they have to do different every time that they come. Because it has so many functions. It has a function to flexion, to anti-flexion, to control, to stabilize. So I know that every joint has that, but core is a bit different. So that's why we try to diversify as much as possible. When it comes to technique and plyometric, we are actually doing it for last 3 years now. We haven't done it before. It was always just kind of local work, corrective stuff. But we realized that we can help our players so much with just teaching them movements that we think that they are missing. These are just some kind of exercises that we just for some running technique that we think he misses, or controls in some kind of landing, or reactive jumps. This is not a jumping practice. This is 3 times 8 reps, which is definitely not enough to any kind of plyometric development. But this is a learning practice where we give him a cue, be at the ground as less time as possible, pull that feet up, and then attack the ground. And so the simple stuff that maybe in this repetitive preps he can learn with some kind of small amount or small volume that he works. Some are a bit more connected with basketball movement for some defensive movements. This is how it starts. You have a guy that jumps over the guys that are in basketball and work with basketball are very familiar with this exercise. It's for engaging the outer leg to push in the slide and staying low, not going up in those slides. It's a lead aft exercise. And the last one is a player who had a problem with the hip in his history, so for that now he has a power to move more explosive and more long movements, but because he has a pattern that he has a short step, which is not optimal for basketball, we are trying to kind of just teach him to get low and then drive as long step as possible. How often do we change preps? Oh, sorry. So this is how we write it down. No photos, no nothing. They have it on a wall, and it is, like I said, so knee work, rolling, mobility, breathing and core, local strength, and then some movements. Everybody has their own, of course, because it's individual's work. We're not going to go through exercises. It would be too much time, but I'm sure you're capable of making your own. So how often do we change or progress in core? Around every 6 to 8 weeks. If it's complicated calendar, we just prolong it for 2 more weeks, so it's about 10 weeks. Why do we decide it? Well, first, when we go through articles, it's always interventions around 6, 8, 10 weeks. Those are kind of anatomical adaptations when they happened of strength and power. That's one reason. Second is our calendar is made like that. So it's pre-season, then we have a first part of the season introduction before a first national team break, then between national team breaks and playoffs. And it's actually, they go through that period every time the same. They have a 2-week learning period where they are trying to actually learn the whole movements. They don't like it. They say, this is a shitty prep. This is terrible. I should do the last prep all the time. And then when they learn it and they're very good at it, they start adapting, and you see that they are really controlling movements in a way that you told them to. So if I said, 3 seconds eccentric and then explosive up, he starts doing it in those 4 weeks. And then in the last 2 weeks is stabilization period where they love it. If they needed so far 60 minutes for a prep, now he needs 30 minutes and he just goes through it. And then you have 2 types of guys. One is, I want this prep until the end of the season. Of course, he's not going to do it until the end of the season. And then you have those that are eager to kind of develop, and they're going to be, so when are we going to change prep? I need something more, something different. But still, as I said, I believe that we do a lot for our players, but I still think that we can develop this, maybe not just this, but this is a topic for today. We can develop prep, maybe with some inside progression during this period, or some kind of education during those periods, because there are a lot of free time when they really learn their prep. Maybe do some more basic stuff, because more I am in basketball, more I realize how much European players, especially European players that didn't go through the college system, really miss basic stuff that they should learn during maybe junior period, and they didn't, because we here gather players from small clubs that they didn't really have a strength and conditioning coach in junior team, so he didn't really learn those basic stuff. And maybe we should do more of that. We always can open those topics. Maybe more involvement with sport development, to talk with individual development coach of his sport, to give us some kind of cue what the player should do. And the thing with that is, I think the biggest problem is we really talk different languages. When we talk to the sports coach, he thinks of basketball and he's always basketball oriented. And then he's always trying to explain me what should he do to do some kind of goal. And what we do is we dissect the movement, we reverse engineer it, we dissect it, and then we try to change this with this, and then it's going to be good, which sometimes is okay, sometimes not. If you ask Franz Bosch, it's total bullshit, but I'm not Franz Bosch, so. And do you guys have any suggestions for us? In that way, maybe some experience. What do you do? How is it different from I mean, this is not something really new for most of you guys, maybe for students, but I didn't invent this, but I'm sure that we all are different in some way. Somebody, if nobody is going.
Question for you in regards to that. You pointed out why you're doing the prep, which makes sense. And then you have KPIs. So what is the prep going to improve? So something that you measure. I mean, So this guy has done his prep, and after his prep, he's ready to go.
I want to go back to. Is it important? It's not really important. When I saw then I put that anatomy of prep. So the whole mobility work and the whole local strength and corrective exercises work is actually based on our initial testing at the start of the season. I was thinking about putting that, but that's really out of the scope of this lecture or whatever this is. So we do. This is something that we call a physiotherapy testing. This is a local strength and local range of motion. So with any kind of deficits, asymmetries, if that was important, those are our KPIs. And if somebody has something really problematic, that's something that we're gonna retest throughout the season until we get if we get to the goal that we want. When it comes to the movement technique, if we saw that when we saw, this is our performance testing, if we saw that someone has a really bad slack in let's say reactive strength indexes of wherever, that is going to be our goal or KPI, as you call it, to change that kind of movement, as I said, with this player that really has a bad technique. So it's not a problem. The problem is not of motor ability. Problem is more of a technique, which changes together with that. We have testing 4 times per season. Thankfully, in our sport, we have those national team breaks where we can test players. So we do it 4 times per season, and those are we rearrange prep. And one more thing is, if player is injured and he comes back, probably the majority of the prep is going to be concentrated on that non-re-injury goal.
So it's table tests, you do dynamic tests as well, like movement patterns, global movement patterns?
Yes, but only in a way that, so let's say somebody has not in type of functional movement screening. No, I'm just saying, I don't think you do it, but more in if we see that his landing is not good, if we see during basketball that some movement patterns are missing, that is
sport specific. So.
Yes, sport specific, but also if we see, let's say we are testing somebody in horizontal jumping, let's say broad jump, and we see that he's not even getting an angle because he doesn't have any kind of pattern for horizontal jump, we are going to learn that. Or in counter movement jumps, especially when you get guys from junior team to senior team, you cannot even say that that's his vertical jump because of the technique that he's using. So we're going to spend first 3 months of teaching him how to jump, and then we're going to see how high he actually jumps. So yes, in that way, yes. That's really hard to measure, but we say, okay, that's a green light, that's good enough.
Do you maybe use the preps to check the daily readiness of the player?
No.
No. Would you add some exercises that you could do that?
Well, I have a bit, I don't know if it's a personal issue, but with daily readiness, we tried with SRPE. I know you're asking about testing for daily readiness, yeah, but we tried with SRPE, it didn't go very well. We got a lot of noise in those results. In this testing, first, our platform is not that good, and I would like to use some kind of counter movement jump. It is an old version, so we need time to get numbers, and it's not really Hawkins dynamics, so you go jump and see, go jump and see. So it's complicated because of that, but I'm not sure if I would use it because it is so late in this whole schedule of the training that then I have to come after the whole managing the team practice and say, you know what, he's not really readiness, so I'm not really a guy to ask for that. So maybe you can tell me, okay, can anybody tell me daily readiness in like for team sports? I know that in NBA they always say they do it.
I don't believe it. Because it's impossible to measure the whole team at the end of the prep in 5 minutes. I mean, maybe you can if you have 5 platforms, otherwise it's impossible. And then it's also a methodological issue that 1 jump is not enough, 2 jumps also probably not. You need, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 jumps, and they're also not warmed up enough to do maximal test. And also if, okay, they jump lower, so what? Does this mean that they are not ready enough?
Yeah.
Usually not.
If I can comment on the situation, I think that the basic problem, in theory, that functions like a good idea. But you need to have, first of all, you need to have a decent compliance from players. If they are not honest, and most of them would tank that, if you know what I mean, so that he doesn't feel like training, he would jump lighter, and you would say, oh, he needs to rest, you know, only maybe last 15 minutes he doesn't run on the basketball court. So it has a lot of noise, like you told me. So otherwise, other things that I was considering in my practice was maybe like a
squeeze test.
Like a squeeze test, but also you can manipulate that. So where can you have a proper result if you believe in their professionality, their honesty in what to do? Because first of all, if they are professionals later on in the season, because of the fluctuality of the season, you know, they are like wins, losses. After a few losses, you know, everybody's demotivated and they will try to sneak their way out of some, let's say, obligatory stuff to do in a gym, on the court, or whatever. So I think that in theory that's a good idea, but in practice it's terrible.
I would comment in a way that I would say that I know exactly a player who's going to lie after 2 months and who's not going to lie. And so if you have 2 guys that are going to lie, you're just not going to test them. But if you have the whole team that is going to lie, then your problem is not readiness, so you don't need to really do that. So, but there are some years where you actually have a team that would not lie at all, and there are some years that it's all useful.
I think that in individual setup, if you're doing some work individually with somebody, I don't know, during the off season or something like that, because the guy that does off seasons with you, he's over there because of you. But when you're in the club, you're there because of them.
Yes,
it's different.
absolutely.
If he chooses you to work with you, he doesn't have any value if he's going to lie to you or not comply with you.
Oh, of course.
That day. So on that level, I think that we can manage. But trying to manage a team, I think that's problematic.
I think it comes back to relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like you said, you know, when we're working, we mostly work in the private sector and in the individual track or whatever you want to call it, and then the guys are coming to us because they trust us. So you know, it's like it's easier to do. But then, obviously, it's multifactorial, the issues. So I think it's good to have, first of all, very simple interventions. So what we use, like output, so a drop jump. I do 3 myself. I think it's, you know, valid, reliable. I don't always do it because sometimes I just see the person and he's just like moving like shit. I don't need to like put him through 3 drop jumps to know that. I said SRP, I used it in football, and like you said, you know, I had Bill kind of learned because, you know, he's been with me for a while in these conversations. So I had 20 players like at the under 19 level, and I ended up having like a small group of 6 that I just used as a proxy for the others because I couldn't rely on the others' answers because they were fluctuating. So, but it was just like basically an incentive to have a conversation with one of the guys.
Yeah, well, as I presented, so you have a time to spend time and to converse with a player. With that, I have my kind of routine that I do with the youngest player. and with the oldest player and with the most complicated player, and I just kind of get, how are you guys? How are you guys? And I can see what's happening. But with this kind of season, when you have, let's say we have 2 games per week, you can actually predict what's going to happen, depending on load that he's going to have, the load during the games, and the most important, win or loss, which is going to affect how is he going to feel about it. But yeah. Anybody having a totally different prep? I know that you use it, and I know that you use it.
Yeah, we use it pretty similar. I would say that we usually don't do the plyometric or something more explosive before we go for a more of a comprehensive warm-up, just because we also like, okay, here you have maybe conditions where you can be in the gym so way earlier.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
Yeah,
That's
I understand.
an organizational problem, but then we usually go through the same progression. So we get players in sort of in the movement, and then they can progress easier towards more intense practice with the same thing. I did play with force plates, let's say last season, the last 2 seasons. I also don't think it's useful for every day. That's impossible. I don't think anybody can do that. But maybe if you do it once per week and just with the players who are maybe in a non-player playing group, so you have a better idea where they are, as opposed to the beginning or when we tested initially, whatever. I think it could be useful. It can be useful because you can get, okay, not just the height, you look at other stuff. I mean, some of the time.
Actually, more important stuff.
Yeah.
If you get, especially for simple stuff. For sure, yeah.
So I think it could be useful.
For readiness, that's what I mean. For performance, the height is most important. What about USB for junior teams? How complicated is it? I mean, that's a question for you too.
Yeah.
Because when I think of junior team, I always think of school. And then I say, oh no, I didn't come, I had school.
For us, the players come directly from school, so it's gonna be chaotic because they're gonna have to switch from school to practice, and they come pretty late. So we have, I don't know, 50 to 20 minutes, and you don't know, maybe they're having a test and they're gonna be late, and another one is having one day off and they're in the school somewhere, and he's gonna come right on time, and then you have to do everything else. And in football you have twice more players, so 20 to 24, and managing that and all the stuff individually, I think it's impossible. It is possible. We tried one season, but you have to have 2 coaches.
So you would do it like in a group?
We do it in groups.
Green groups?
Yeah.
So like homogenic groups, like, or you do it all together?
No, it's homogenic groups. Some are doing, I don't know, mobility, core. Some are doing their individual stuff. We still try to individual some stuff, like based on pre-season testing, and then we like switch.
I know that guy from Tenerife, basketball, a friend. He has a really cool stuff where he has red, so he has a prep like I do, but then he has green letters and then yellow letters and red letters. So if he wants to do a big prep that is really hard, then you take everything. And if you want to do just really light, then it's just green letters. So for me, it was always too complicated. I don't know what would I put in the route, so just do everything all the time. And if I want to do something more, I would do something more. But yeah, I think that's kind of a good idea, or just put it in kind of sectors. What do you actually want to do with the player? I know that one of my coaches said that he loves me. He didn't even know what we are doing at prep, but he said, I love that you're doing prep. At least I don't need to see player with croissants in their mouth, because you have to see it. They come to you with croissants in their mouth, which is true.
And this is also maybe one part, of prep, because when you establish this ritual to players, that they need to come before every practice. For us in the academy, it's 30 minutes. For you, senior team, probably much sooner.
Yeah,
And
depends.
because
Yeah,
the guys had to come earlier, like you said, maybe they are 2 minutes late, but they're late on prep, not on team practice.
yeah, for sure.
Maybe, I don't know, they're with the physio, and physio is taking 5 minutes later. They're going to be late for prep, not for team practice. So you can use the prep also, to compensate, get everybody ready for practice. So when it's start of practice, everybody's 100%.
It for sure is an error zone and that's the.
How many guys is involved at your team? You got 15 players, and how many? So you and
Me and him.
just you two?
Yeah, it's not just. It's a lot. it's just for NBA team, but for any kind of team in Europe, it's amazing. But it's really complicated for these first 2 weeks. After that,
So you get a lot of buy-in from the players. So they
I never. I had 100% buy-in for all the team, even the guys that are very complicated. Even they are. I'm not sure why, but when they realize that it's good for them, they're like, I don't know how to do it.
Most important, they see value in it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
individualized. They know they need to work on it,
yeah.
and they probably see results, and then they buy it.
I actually saw it first time when I started working in Cibona, and there was a guy called Ivan Siriščević. He had a really good strength and conditioning coach, and he just showed him million of exercises, and he would do every day and do million of exercises. And I was like, and he was always, from the start of practice, he was ready, he would go, and I was like, this is good, you could do, but this is too much, but and then I would give him a program, and he would add my program to this million exercise. So he would come 1.5 or even 1.5 hour earlier just to do everything that he can do. But it actually does kind of make sense for sure. The whole world does it. It absolutely makes sense if the whole world does it.
How would you approach the prep philosophy in a national team? Because we know players come from different clubs. They're not used to doing something. You can't get the buy-in because you're with them for a limited amount of time. Maybe your thoughts?
I never was in national team as a head coach, as a head strength and conditioning coach. I was as an assistant, but at that time the main strength and conditioning coach was such a big figure. That's the guy that works with and football Croatian national team now. He's a big figure, so he comes there, he makes prep, everybody does prep. Like the NBA guys, everybody's doing it. Nobody's even asking. I think it's still a buy-in. It's for national team. It depends of the culture of the national team. If you get a buy-in from the coach that makes sense, and if coach says prep is a part of the practice, you have to come, and then absolutely some guys come and just cheat from the start. But if he's there, he has to be there. He can do fucking planks. Do planks, man. Simplify it for a guy. But and then he starts doing planks, then you just add stuff. You know what, I saw you. Just this mobility. And it's always one more mobility work.
What about the game day before? Before the games, is it the same?
Same, it's just one round. So usually it's like 3 rounds of something. For game, it's just 1 round of everything. And they go through it because they're very familiar with it, their body's familiar with it, they know what they are getting, and then they have their own kind of, because we don't have everything on the court, on the away court, so they, even when we are in the home games, we do it on the court, because we have enough space here in Sledite, but they have their own kind of variations of the prep for it, but it's mostly their prep, it's their routine. And they know when they have to come and do it. as I said, when they kind of realize that it's good for them, no problem at all. Then everybody likes it. What about from the physio side?
So my opinion, when you were discussing this part of buying from the player, I think here really important aspect is the fact that when you do this pre-season screening and testing and all this stuff, they're aware from the start that it's actually not only performance benefits from that, but also health benefits. So that gives them even more kind of a buy.
That's true, yeah.
Because they think, okay, they're really interested, genuinely interested in our health, not just performance. They're not just gonna use us, squeeze us, and then throw us away, but they might think about our health as well.
I think this is
So
true,
from
especially
such a-
for guys who've been injured more in the past.
Yeah,
For sure.
Of course.
yeah.
So it's really strong, and here the communication part with them is really important. So our part starts from really thorough assessment, interview. So we really take a keen interest into their history of injuries, which also then makes a basis of the assessment. So sometimes assessment can be also then modified, can be tailored to specific injuries. Of course, we can make some additional imaging, all of that kind of stuff. And players are not stupid, they see these kind of things, right? So this is, from my point of view, it's really important thing. Because, as people said, all these corrective exercises are then really individualized and tailored. And obviously progressed over the time, as he said, which is really important. So it's not just one piece of program and that works for the whole of the season, which was maybe, let's say, how we did stuff in the past, but because we were understaffed back then.
For sure, yeah, definitely, yeah.
For us, it made a really big difference because strength and conditioning team got involved into that, let's say, kinesiotherapy and prevention part of the deal. Because for one practitioner, it's so hard to cover everything when it comes to prevention. It's such a big topic and a big, discussion. So working hand in hand with different sectors, I think it's really useful and then handy. So players actually get loads of it from it, and you hear also from them. They report they've been around, they've seen EuroLeague organizations, World Cup, doesn't matter, and they won't lie. And they sometimes say, "This is how we work here." It's makes sense. It's really good. So it gives you even more than, let's say, how to say.
I also get a lot from speaking with their personal coaches. Marco knows this because we see each other every summer, because he has two of our players. When he realizes that you are preparing the first prep for him as a continuation from the summer work, it doesn't even need to be a buy-in. You have a press from the summer guy, you have the press from the season guy, it's there, everything just claps and it goes, and it's the easiest, because you kind of get even though there are kind of players that are with us for some time, you kind of get a new player every summer, because either he was at national team, so he opened a new issue in his body, or he was in the summer and he opened a new issue in his body, or closed an issue. But it's those, and as Rok said, the communication, I think when they realize that there are no secrets between physios and strength and conditioning coaches, when it's oh, you have a problem with that, please go to the physios, he's gonna tell me. And then he comes and then he has a new thing in prep. You have to do this because I talked to the Rok, and then they realize they cannot really move anywhere. This is here for them, and Rok is absolutely right. If we didn't have a buy-in for health, they wouldn't come for performance, because they are so tired of performance that they come here and they're probably 90% of season exhausted. So they're too tired to think. But when they think about this, the biggest topic of it all, the prevention, then they are all in, even though they don't really understand the prevention, but neither we do.
Can you try to turn that slide with like the order of who's doing stuff?
Oh, okay.
Okay, did you try maybe sometimes to switch some of those things, like switching the order? Of course, not the most intensive one on the start, but did you try maybe with the first 3 or 4 topics that you tried maybe to switch around, maybe to? Or this is something like that that came with your experience doing stuff with people, or it's just randomly?
It absolutely came with experience, because first it was just foam rolling, stretching, and core. That's how it started. So then you realize you can maybe do stuff, and then you realize everything has its own section. So every section has its goal, and everything is. So when I go and show you the prep, there are like sections there, and every section is for some kind of goal, and that's how he remembers it. So he does, when he remembers prep, he remembers a goal of the section, and he does that in a kind of circle and superset. So no, I didn't, but they do it often. They change it often, because the band is taken. I have, and the mat is here, so I'm going to lie down.
They look at the stuff like just the task, no matter the order, like doing a circuit training, something like that. In their minds.
Well, I just say you can switch stuff, no problem, but tendon is at the start, and technique is at the end.
I get it.
And even the exercises inside the section, they like to switch it, because of course the dumbbell is taken or whatever.
I was considering like trying to emphasize like the whole anatomy of the prep, like going nervous system arousal wise, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
So let's say the tendon stuff, it's like pretty on the level of arousement is like going in the sympathetic nervous system.
Yes.
So let's say like,
because it needs to be heavy.
Yeah.
So yeah, you go heavy and it hurts.
Yeah.
If I put it, it hurts. So it's his on.
I get it.
Yeah.
So the thing is, did you maybe try to consider like before to do like, let's say some stuff of resetting the nervous system before it gets amplified? You know what I mean? Because people come to practices, from this and that. They come from the travels, from the games, from the wins, losses, doesn't matter. And they can be like, let's say, like disturbed in the way of getting, let's say, more in the sympathetic nervous system, like generally aroused. Okay. So maybe like trying to start the prep with resetting, doing some breathing drills, stuff like that. Then maybe after that get to the core, and after core doing some mobility. Why am I saying that? Because when you switch off the nervous system, you can have a lot less work on the mobility or better mobility exercises or improvements in mobility if you do that on the start. Because something is not a mobility issue. Something is just a nervous system arousal issue.
True.
I mean, because in general, when you consider things, mobility, let's say that we can. I presume that when you say mobility, you also think maybe in some matters like flexibility stuff also.
Sometimes, yeah, of course.
Flexibility is also kind of system inhibition. Understand? So the thing is, when you do the breath work, a lot of those things can be like cleaned up. So you leave only with the stuff that really matter. In general, some stuff is like burning. In general speaking, some stuff is burning. When it burns down, you are dealing with the leftovers. And let's say that work can be dealing with the leftovers later on if we reset the nervous system, okay? We establish the neural patterns that we would like to be introduced in the practice. And later on, after that, you go to local strength, technique and plyometrics, and everything.
Thank you. No. I have nothing to add. Thank you. It's a thought to my mind and our research. Not bad. So this is actually kind of the time frame that we was thinking of. Of course, please don't just dissipate. There are drinks. You can stay, you can talk, group, and thank you for coming.